Two women left their corporate careers within months of each other, both of them with no real plan. One of them quit and pushed straight through into trying to build a business, until her body forced her to stop. The other one was told by her cardiologist that her job was incompatible with her health, and she used the pause that followed as a runway. Same destination, very different roads, and a really important conversation about why slowing down ends up being the shortcut. That is what today is about. Welcome to the Comeback Show. I'm Jenn Fast, founder of Reinvention with Jenn Fast, and your host for this space where we talk honestly about the messy, beautiful, and sometimes painful process of rebuilding your life in midlife and beyond. If you've ever felt like you were becoming someone new but weren't quite sure who that person was yet, this show is for you. Pull up a chair. You belong here. My guest today is someone I met because she answered a comment of mine on Threads with the kind of warmth that is rare in the creator world. It carried straight through into our prep call, and you'll hear it in this conversation. Amanda Ingram is a self-discovery coach and the founder of Find Your Spark Coaching. She works with women navigating major life changes, and in her own words, she helps women who became everything to everyone else remember who they are. I want you to sit with that phrase for just a second. Women who became everything to everyone else remember who they are. Because so many of us have spent decades being exactly that, everything to everyone, and we have lost the thread of who we were underneath all of it. Amanda has built her whole practice around helping women find that thread again. Amanda, welcome to the Comeback Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, before we get into the meat of this conversation, I want our listeners to hear how you got here, because your story is the heart of why your work hits the way it does. From your work in the television industry to the corporate buyout, the second daughter, and the moment you realized that the role you were in wasn't going to fit anymore. Can you walk us through it?
As you mentioned, I worked in television, and it's interesting because I got into that because I actually didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was actually just following what my family had done. What ended up happening in that space was over time, they got bought out by corporate, and it just started to become more and more of a incorrect fit. And I was really starting to kind of question what I was doing there, how it felt, all of that stuff. And then I had my first daughter, and here in Canada, I got a year off. And it was in that year I got to actually just be as much as you can having a baby or a small infant with you. But it made me going back to work very obvious that this was not for me anymore. That wasn't who I was. And I knew that when I had my second child, I wanted to leave. And something that I found really shocking for me was going back how easily it was to fall back into that old way of being and just not really realize what was happening, but just getting sucked right back in. So I knew that after my second daughter, I had to just go. And so I did that without a plan. And that led to me just pushing and pushing and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, who I was, create a business. And over time, and trying to look outside of myself constantly and never stopping that pushing and never stopping the spinning thoughts and all of it, I ended up completely burning out and being forced to slow down. The one thing that I really truly believed I couldn't do, that wasn't going to help, that wasn't going to get me where I needed to be. And it ended up being the one thing that did, the one step that I was missing. And I finally got to hear myself.
So you quit with no plan. Looking back at it now, was that bravery, was that survival, or was that the only door you could see at the time?
I think it's a combination of all three, honestly, and just in different facets. Bravery in that I actually did it instead of thinking about it, because my story would have been a lot different if I hadn't done it. Survival because I couldn't keep going the way I was. And I knew that. And I knew it was sucking the life from me. And having my children gave me this feeling of, I don't want to miss this. I'm missing seeing my kids grow up. And is that worth it? And then it was the only path I could see at the time, truly. I knew if I went back again to work, I would have not left. I would have stayed, and this would be a much different story that I would be telling. So yeah, a little bit of all three.
Now, when the burnout hit, how did it announce itself? What were the signs?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I really didn't realize it until I was already in. Now, looking back, those first signs that I wasn't seeing and was ignoring completely were just sheer exhaustion, not even really an exhaustion that can be fixed with just rest. It was just mentally always going and worrying and thinking and just constantly feeling like I couldn't do anything for myself because I hadn't earned it. And it was just that never-ending search for me. Who am I? What am I doing? If someone could just tell me that. It was all of this kind of frantic stuff that was leading into this burnout. But for me, it was just that constant exhaustion, like that constant, I can't keep doing this anymore kind of thing, but I don't know what else to do. That kind of just kept me going and going until I couldn't any longer.
When did you stop pushing and let yourself actually slow down?
I'd love to say that I noticed what I needed and slowed down. No, absolutely not. No, I ended up almost having a mental breakdown, essentially, and needing to stop everything. I quit the businesses I had. I stopped doing them. I stopped social media. I got some help with the mental side of things because anxiety and things were just really rough. And that's when I was forced to slow down. I, again, would love to say I did this so gently and willingly. No, I fought every step of the way for having to do this. Was when I sat down one day outside in the summer watching my kids and poetry started to come through. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started to write it down. And it was really interesting because they were all things that were about where I was at and healing and all of that really cool stuff. And I kind of went, oh, there you are. I can hear myself again.
That is so beautiful. And so much of what you just said feels really familiar. But I am going to tell you, I took a very different route to almost the same place. And I think that's why this conversation is going to be useful to the women listening. So here's the short version of my last few years. I had a 30-year corporate career. That last decade I spent as an executive assistant to C-suite leaders in both tech and biotech companies, including Amazon. I was very good at it. I was also absolutely miserable at it. My third marriage was circling the drain. My oldest daughter had been diagnosed with autism, and both of my girls and I are ADHD, although I didn't know that about myself at the time. I had gained 60 pounds, and at only 5 feet tall, every single pound shows up. My sleep was a disaster. I had been in perimenopause for about 5 years without realizing it, so I thought I was just losing my mind. So I enrolled in a weight loss program that thankfully was run by a doctor who looked at me as a whole person. She sent me to every specialist that mattered, and it was the cardiologist she sent me to, who said the one sentence that I will never forget. He looked at me in the eye and he said, "Jennifer, it's time to decide whether your job is compatible with your health." I walked away from my career shortly after. No plan like you, no savings buffer, and this is the part where my story diverges a little bit from yours. I had a husband who said, rest first. You have never stayed home with the girls. You have always wanted to. So if you want to build a business, great, build one. But if you don't, just heal. So I rested first. And after 3 months of rest, I built this. Here's the question I keep coming back to for you. You ended up in roughly the same place that I did, but you had to fight through burnout to get there. Yeah. And I had some runway. If you had been told to rest first, the way that I was, do you think that you would have actually rested, or do you think you were going to have to hit that wall no matter what?
It's a really good question. I think I probably would have fought that still. But yeah, there would have been a difference, I think, having that support first, because this is what I do for my clients too, actually, is show up and give that almost permission. Not that you need permission, but sometimes it's helpful that you can rest, that resting is actually what's going to get you to where you want to go faster. I would like to believe that having support and having somebody say, no, this is actually part of it, would have been incredibly beneficial and really shortened my journey down from a year down to much less than that. And without the horrible burnout, which would have been really great.
That's a very honest answer. One of the things that I think about a lot is the difference between being in survival mode and what I have started calling soul exhaustion. You know, they look the same from the outside, but they need completely different responses.
Yes.
And the wrong response is what keeps women stuck for years, I think. How would you define survival mode in your own words? And in your experience, what does it look like from the outside before someone has a name for it?
Yeah, so survival mode for me is it's going through the motions, right? Being exhausted, but not really having any idea of what to do. Maybe being resentful of people in your life because you're not saying no, because you're being everything to everyone, and really feeling like even though you are actively putting yourself last, you are still very aware of that and really unsure of how to change it, but knowing that you want to change it. And of course, just being exhausted. Survival mode is just, we are tired and we are giving and giving and going through those motions, but it's never quite enough.
That sounds familiar. Now, can you describe soul exhaustion for me? How is that different from just having a really hard chapter or a season that just needs to close?
Yeah, so to me, soul exhaustion, I think, is what we become aware of once we're aware of the survival mode and we're starting to maybe put up some boundaries and say, hey, I get to come first sometimes, and resting and doing all of those things. Soul exhaustion comes in next, where you go, okay, I've done those things. Why don't I feel different? Why does it still feel the same? Who am I underneath it all? Why am I here? What am I doing? And so often we want to put structure to that. We want to find someone to tell us who we are. We want to do all the things we used to do to figure it out. But what that actually does is just keeps us in these old patterns and cycles that are keeping us stuck and lost.
And here's the part that I want to add for our listeners. When you are in chronic stress for years, your executive function actually breaks. Your working memory gets slower, your ability to make decisions gets foggy, even your impulse control wears thin. And women blame themselves for that. They think they have become lazy or scattered or weak, but they have not. Their brain is literally running on fumes. Right. Now, you see this from a different angle in your coaching practice. What are the tells you watch for when a woman walks in and you can see that she is not just under-rested, she's in soul exhaustion?
Some of the first things that we do is I pair up a couple of things, because when we're in survival mode and soul exhaustion, there is that level of you do need to rest, you do need to slow down, you need that permission to put yourself first. And so I pair that with the soul exhaustion part, where we start to shift how you see yourself. A lot of women, because they don't know who they are, they don't trust themselves anymore. They come with a lot of things that they want to fix about themselves. And I very much come in as the you weren't broken in the first place kind of energy. And we can shift just, I'm going to rest and put myself first, to I'm going to rest and put myself first because who I am is good. I don't need to earn things. I don't need to earn my rest or my worth. The way I live in this world is good, and it is okay that it's different from other people. So not only are we addressing this exhaustion, but we're also addressing why you feel like you can't have it in the first place and breaking those cycles. And then from there, it gets fun, because I don't actually believe that remembering who you are has to be a slog or work or anything like that. It actually gets to be reconnecting to what you enjoy in life, which is also a really powerful tool too, which we'll dive into later, I'm sure.
We will, you bet. So if a woman listening right now is not sure which one she's in, survival mode or soul exhaustion, what's a question she could ask herself right now to figure it out?
Yeah, so I would very much ask, it's funny, and the answer may vary, but I would say, is this something that like regular traditional self-care feels like it would help you do? Or if you had a nap, if you had more time to yourself, if you got to put up those boundaries, would you feel completely better, or would you still be going, sure, but what else is there? Is this it? Am I doing what I'm here to do kind of energy? And that can help, because this is something that our traditional methods of self-care aren't going to help with, unfortunately.
So here's the title of this episode, and I think the most counterintuitive thing that both of us learned the hard way. Slowing down is the shortcut, not slowing down as in giving up, not slowing down as in waiting for the right time, slowing down as the actual route to your next chapter. And nobody who has built their identity on achievement wants to hear that. Why do you think slowing down is so hard, specifically for the eldest daughter, the overachiever, the people pleaser woman that we both work with?
Yeah. And this is this idea that slowing down is falling behind. Slowing down is failing. And when we look at it through a lens of how so many of us were raised, which is that our worth is equal to productivity, that what we can do is directly affecting how we're allowed to feel about ourselves. What we're allowed to give ourselves is how much we have done for others. So to tell someone who's going through that they need to slow down, it feels like the exact opposite of everything you've ever been told or learned about yourself and how you are meant to exist on this world. So that slowing down is so difficult because you're breaking a cycle that is so deeply ingrained in who you are that it just feels intrinsically wrong until you start to do it and you start to realize. It's also why I love the fact that it's a shortcut, because that can counter that thinking a little bit into thinking that it's slow, but am I going to get there faster? So it piques that one little part of us that's still in there being like, no, but we have to get there, get to the finish line, prove ourselves kind of thing. It helps. But yeah, slowing down is everything.
You said something earlier that I have not stopped thinking about. You said you finally heard yourself when it was time to stop. What did you hear that you couldn't hear when you were pushing through?
So I will always tell people, because I think sometimes we think we're blocked, we're not hearing ourselves, that somehow our own voice is gone. And that's not true. Your wisdom is always there. Your light is there. But it gets buried underneath all the other voices, under the beliefs of others. And when we are pushing or spinning or looking or achieving or chasing even, you can't hear that quiet voice within you. But when we start to slow down a little bit, when we can start quieting those voices, all of a sudden that voice within us, we can start to hear it. And for me, it was such a gentle voice that is saying, it's okay. We can slow down. This is okay. You are good. It's a very nurturing, wonderful voice that is truly there to help you, that is never judging or mean or fearful or doubtful. It's the one that's just quietly there being like, yeah, it's going to be okay. And that is hard sometimes to hear and even harder to trust. But that's part of the journey.
It is, yeah. Speaking of journeys, I did want to kind of share with our listeners what that runway actually looked like for me, because I think slowing down sounds romantic until you try it. Yes. The first 3 months, I did almost nothing. I went to doctor's appointments, I worked out, I cooked healthy meals, I cleaned and organized the house, and I went to therapy. I sometimes felt useless and guilty and a little itchy in my own skin. The instinct to start a business immediately was like screaming at me. And so every time I tried to skip the rest part, though, and start building, my body told on me. I would crash. My sleep would tank. My nervous system would spike. It took me months to trust that the rest was actually the work. And so here's where I want to bring in something that you mentioned that is so different from how anyone else talks about reinvention. You work with inner child, play, and joy as part of slowing down. Most reinvention conversations just skip that completely. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so this is something that is, I would say, something I love. It's my favorite part of what I do. And it's this reconnection to inner child. But I know sometimes that can be a little bit of a touchy space for people. So what I always say is we're not necessarily reconnecting to the inner child who's gone through it all. We are connecting to that being that came here, knowing exactly who they are, why they are here, who was okay with making mistakes. When they fell, they got back up. That beautiful energy within you. That's what we're connecting to. And I do this by following the client's lead because this comes from you. And it's so interesting. Even clients who say that they don't know what they enjoy anymore or what's fun for them will always inadvertently come up with what they actually want to do. And so we'll do things like coloring or painting, singing, writing, whatever it is that person is interested in. And what it becomes is almost this love letter to your inner child to be like, yes, we're okay. And let's walk together and create this. And it helps that child who maybe has gone through a lot feel safe again and feel like they don't have to protect you or worry about what people will think. And we do even really fun things like, especially for those who want to let go of a little bit of control, it's actively doing something bad. So saying, I'm going to paint, but with the intention of it's going to be bad. And if for a second you think, oh, this is good because our brains want to turn it into something productive that we can sell or do something with, we like mix it all up and go, oh, okay, no. And it's allowing us to make mistakes. It's allowing us to just do things for the sheer joy of it. And in doing so, you are reclaiming those pieces of yourself, especially for kids who had to grow up quickly. Let's reclaim that childhood. Let's have that fun that you deserve. And you remember who you are while also healing that part of you and building that trust. It's a beautiful integration that really, it's amazing the transformation that comes from doing that.
I bet it sounds so beautiful.
It's so much fun.
Unique. Yeah. It also it kind of explains why like coloring for adults has come back.
Yes.
And is so popular. I do a little bit myself. And then for my fellow ADHDers who like coloring, the real game changer for me has been monochrome color books. I don't know if I've
heard of
them,
them.
but these are the coloring books. You only use one color.
Amazing.
And it's usually black, but you can pick whatever color is soothing to you. And it just does so much to not overstimulate you if you get easily overstimulated or get obsessed with what color you should be using. And so that's a great tip. And so here's another question that I wanted to put to both of us. What does slowing down not mean? What is the version of slowing down that's maybe actually still hustle wearing a softer outfit?
Yeah. Slowing down can't have a job a lot of the time because, like you said, slowing down is really uncomfortable and it feels like it should be like the reward at the end. But actually, slowing down is very difficult. And it's because you're being asked to actually hear yourself, to sit with yourself, to be. And so often we want to give that structure or a job so that we can have this outward score of how well we're doing at it, like this validation almost. Yep. And then all of a sudden it just becomes something else that you're tracking and you're trying to prove that you're good at it and you're comparing yourself to others. And what I always say is slowing down needs to be you figuring out how you feel, what your energy is without all of that stuff. So at least at the very beginning, I'm always like, take all that structure and the lists and everything that you want it to be and throw it out the window and just sit in that discomfort a little bit, because that's where you're going to start to understand who you actually are, what your own rhythm is in life, and what you're not as well.
Yes, I totally agree. As someone who took 3 months to slow down and calm down before I dove headlong into building a business, not only did I have to resist the urge to start building the business, I had to stop from doing all of the things that I was doing and turning them into huge projects that I had to push through. I cleaned the house on a regular basis. I find that soothing, but I had to stop myself from saying, ooh, I should totally reorganize everything and I should film it for content. And no, just enjoy the process, be in the moment. So it was really tough, just like you said. Okay. Here's something else I find fascinating. You and I have completely different coaching frameworks. You have Find Your Spark. I have the Rewrite. We came up with them separately. We came at them from different directions. Mm-hmm. And both of them touch on the exact same place, but at different points in the journey. And that is self-trust. In your flow chart of the journey, self-trust is the final place. Yes. Why for you does it sit at the end and not at the beginning?
So for me, and the journey that I went on and my clients tend to go on with me, we're really working on understanding who you are now. You've done a whole bunch of healing work and you're going, what now? Why is nothing different? Where's that fulfillment I wanted? Where's that life that I was hoping to create? And so we're walking that journey to understand who you are first. The trust comes alongside the understanding who you are, the figuring it out, the having fun, the letting go, the reconnection. And the reason why the trust is at the end is because once you have that trust, that's where that confidence is. That's where you are making the decisions in your life that you wish to make. Without really second guessing yourself. That's when we're not worrying about what other people think about you because you trust that you know the way. And it's this moment of going, there you go. You can now go and be in this world as who you truly are. And with that trust, you can learn things, try things, and really always anchor it back into you and what you want and where you go. And so for me, that trust is everything because we have been told for so long not to trust ourselves, our intuition. And when you reconnect to that's when this beautiful journey of life begins. And I am here for the transition of the old into the new. And when it is time for that new life to begin, I have helped you build this beautiful foundation to take those steps.
I love that. I can definitely see the value in that. In my framework, I have kind of a version of the same idea in the Rewrite. So we usually identify where you lost that thread of who you are. We rebuild internal authority and self-trust kind of piece by piece. We also get clear on who you want to be, whether or not that's who you used to be. And then we kind of align your actual life with what you say matters to you. And so the through line of all of that is rebuilding your ability to trust yourself. Because that's the part where everyone outsourced, when they were just trying to survive. Here's what I see with the women that I work with. They keep outsourcing their decisions. They ask their husband, they ask their friends, the internet, their therapist, what should I do? And the answer they actually need is the one that they stop trusting themselves to give. When you're working with someone, what is the first move you give a woman to stop outsourcing their decisions and start trusting her own again?
So when I work with clients, walk with them on this journey because we're not going anywhere. I'm not leading you anywhere. I'm not teaching you anything because this is you. We're coming home to you, to who you are. This is your journey. And so the way we start to shift that focus within, instead of can I do this or what should I do, I mirror back to them through conversation, their own wisdom to them. So when they are asking a question, they are essentially answering the question as well through a session with me. And it's so powerful to realize that you did know the answer all along. You just maybe weren't seeing it or you needed a different perspective to really understand that wisdom. And so when I get to walk that journey with them and be that person reflecting it back to them, they start to see that. And I always make a point of saying, and this was all you. It's all you. I am here to help, but it's always their own wisdom being reflected back to them in a way where they can see the next step or where to go and know that was them that did it. And over time, as we continue to do that, that builds that beautiful trust within them.
That is so powerful. Here, I wanted to kind of name something out loud because both of us serve this audience and both of us are in it. ADHD and anxiety. It makes self-trust really hard. Like when your brain has lied to you for years and when you forget important things, when your nervous system like overshoots, you kind of stop trusting your own signals.
Yeah.
How does the neurodivergence piece show up in your coaching? And what do you tell a woman whose brain is part of why she stopped trusting herself in the first place?
I really find, again, a perspective change. I find that to be incredibly powerful, to be like, yes, and yes, it's hard. Yes, it's doing this, but your brain is also magical in its own way too. These two things can exist at the same time. Same with anxiety, same with all of these things that we live with. I've always seen it as when I was othering it, like othering the anxiety, othering the neurodivergence, it was always taking a part of me and saying, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that part of me. But when we go, but it's who I am today, right? It's where I'm at today. And this version of me is still worthy and wonderful and magical and deserving of love. We allow ourselves to welcome all of those parts in and let ourselves be whole. Because again, it can exist that I don't love being anxious all the time and how that affects my life. I don't love being all over the place sometimes. But at the same time, I can also go, but it's a part of me right now. And I can make space for that. And I can also see some of the really positive sides of some of these things as well, right? And it has helped me change how I approach it. Instead of being something to fix, really something to actually make space for. Because when we can do that, it's not as bad. It actually can be something that we work together with and make something beautiful out of.
Yeah, what you described is pretty much my own exact experience with it and kind of the experience of the women that I work with and even my own daughters. You know, at first, like I didn't get diagnosed until this year. I'm 52, so I've lived with this my whole life. And it explained an awful lot. So there was some relief when I was diagnosed, but with the relief also comes a grief of like, how could my life have been different if I understood earlier? And I think that's a normal part of receiving a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. But I love your reframe or your focus on, okay, this is part of me and there's nothing wrong with that. Now that we know, we can make adjustments and plan for this to happen. So that has been really powerful. Mm-hmm. After you've worked with someone and they actually feel like self-trust is coming back online, what does that actually look and feel like? Like, what is some evidence a woman can watch for to tell her that this is working for her?
Yeah, so there is a calm almost that starts to show up. And it shows up very quietly a lot of the time. And all of a sudden in a session, someone will be like, I just feel better. Things just feel better. And we're not fighting with ourselves anymore, right? There's not that constant, oh, but what if that's wrong? What if? There's almost this level of, okay, I'll be okay no matter what. Even if I take that step and it's not the right one, that's okay. I take a different step and we keep going. And it's just almost like this freedom and this calm is what you start to feel. And lighter is always what I say. I can feel the energy that comes from my clients and it gets lighter and lighter and I can see the shift. And I know for them, it's that feeling though, of just that lighter, that freedom, that quiet almost, as quiet as anyone's brain gets anyway.
And I found the same thing. A lot of times, even we're so not used to calm, we're so used to living in chaos that we don't even recognize it when it comes. And it feels a little foreign and a little weird, but when you get used to it, you really start to love it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Now, before we close, I want our listeners to know exactly where to find you and how to work with you. Can you tell us about a spark session? What is it? What happens inside it? Who's it for?
Yeah, so a spark session is for my overachievers, my people pleasers, my women who are really ready to put themselves first and create a life that's actually theirs. And what this session is, it's a 60-minute session done via Zoom where we're going to kind of quiet those outside voices, and I'm going to really help you reflect your wisdom back to you. We do this through conversation, through talking about the things that you're struggling with, where you wish to go. And you end up with this, what I call a spark map, where you're going to have those next steps, some tips for things that you can do. We're probably definitely going to leave with something fun to do as well to reconnect to inner child. But it's really for when you're not quite sure what to do next. And you're going to come to this session, you're going to hear your own beautiful wisdom, and you're going to leave with that clarity, that confidence to really move forwards in a way that actually feels like you, and to do so in a way that is really sustainable for you.
That sounds lovely. And for our listeners, you can find Amanda and Find Your Spark Coaching on Instagram and Threads as Find Your Spark Coaching. And of course, the link to book a spark session is in the show notes for you. So if you're nodding through this whole episode, that spark session is your next move. And then for Amanda, there is one last question that I ask all my guests, and it's this. If a woman listening right now could only take one message from this whole conversation, what do you hope that is?
I always hope that women listening, women out there who have been maybe doubting themselves, knowing that they're here for something more, wondering what that is, to just know that it can change, that you don't have to stay where you are, that you are always allowed to change your life, to do the things that you've always wanted to do. It's never too late. And you can do it. And who you truly are underneath all of those roles, underneath everything, is absolutely wonderful and magical and deserving of all of the love, including your own, especially your own. And you really can create a beautiful life that you love. It is possible. You can do it because you're amazing.
Yes, you are. And thank you for that. Thank you for this whole conversation.
Thank you.
You know, you came on this show because you just raised your hand on the Threads comment, and look at all the stuff that happened as a result. Thank you for taking that risk. For our listeners, if today's episode hit something in you, here's what I want you to do. Go follow Amanda on Threads and Instagram at Find Your Spark Coaching. And if a spark session sounds like exactly what you've been circling around, the link is going to be in the show notes for you. Don't make this another episode that you just listen to and then go back to pushing harder. The whole point of this conversation was that pushing harder is what stole the thread in the first place. And if this episode meant something to you, please subscribe. Share it with a woman in your life who needs to hear these messages. And consider leaving a 5-star review. Those go a long way towards helping others find us. Thank you for listening. I'm Jenn Fast, and I will see you the next time on The Comeback Show.